Thank you, Lenas. We are now going to discuss conflict in business situations. Remember that this is one of the topics in LO3 that you've got to know. So, what have you got to know under conflict? In a meeting, you'll have to devise ways of resolving conflict. Recording the conflict resolution process by keeping minutes. You have to make sure that minutes are kept. Then you move on without even referring to the conflict. If this conflict has been resolved, you move on. You don't have to remind this person, remember what he did to you the other time? Remember, he gave you a hiding? You don't entertain such things. You don't go back to the conflict. When you have solved the conflict, resolved it, make sure that you move on. Don't ever refer to the conflict at hand. This is another set of steps that you can use to resolve conflict. You explain the situation from your point of view, giving specific facts. Now, this is where you already have these two people seated down. You are trying to manage their conflict. You explain their situation to say, I have noticed that this are happening. You explain the situation. And then you describe the conflict. You describe how it is affecting work-related performance. You also have to tell them how that their conflict affects their performance, because definitely, like I said, some people don't even feel like going to work because there is conflict. So you've got to make them aware of the fact that it affects their performance. You know, with other cases, you'll just see the performance of a person that there must be a problem there. And when you try to find out, you will discover that there is conflict between this person and that person. One may not be attending meetings or issues like that, so you have to mention all those issues that I've noticed that you don't even attend meetings when I have called them. I've noticed that this is taking place and this is affecting your performance. Ask the other party to explain his or her point of view. You've got these two people seated here. One party should explain his point of view, and another should explain his point of view. Then agree on the problem. You have to agree what the causes of this conflict is. In other words, you agree on what the problem of this issue is. Then you develop and discuss possible solutions. Remember, you've got these two people who are in conflict with each other, and all of you, the three of you, develop and discuss possible solutions. So it helps because these people who are in conflict with each other will feel that they own the solutions to the conflict. If you involve them in the development of the solutions, they should discuss, this is how we are going to manage the situation. Determine the extent to which each of you can be held accountable to implement it. Now that we've discussed the solutions, you have to determine the extent to which each of you can be held accountable to implement it. Arrange a follow-up meeting to monitor progress. You have to make sure that there is progress. These people are no more in conflict with each other, so you have to arrange a follow-up meeting to address that. And then you move on. Like I said before, you don't have to mention to the other party that, remember this happened? Remember how he gave you a hiding when you did this? Remember? No, you don't do that. You just move on. There's yeah, it's very important that you should Like I said before, you should know these causes of conflict together with the types of conflict for you to do well in the examination. So let's move on to the next topic, which would be entrepreneurship. It will not be a long one. Entrepreneurial qualities. Remember, you've got to, we actually want you to be an entrepreneur and a good one. But you've got to know if you've got those qualities of being a good entrepreneur. So what have you got to know as the grade 12 learner? Firstly, you must be able to identify the concept of business venture. You must be able to identify and evaluate entrepreneurial qualities and assess the business venture. In other words, from the case studies, you should be able to say, this is an entrepreneurial quality, this is an entrepreneurial quality. You should be able to identify them and evaluate them. This is a good one because, and assess the business venture. Explore key success factors from case studies, identify areas for improvement. You should differentiate, compare, and discuss business-related issues from different business sectors operating in the micro market and macro business environment. So those are issues that you must know relating to entrepreneurial qualities. Now, how do you identify the concept business venture? Remember I said you should be able to know the concept business venture. A business venture is an undertaking that involves some risk, but where the entrepreneur hopes to make some profit. Let's remember that. If this undertaking involves some risk, but you also hope to get profit, that is a business venture. Risks that may be involved may be the risk of time, the risk of money. You may run a risk of wasting time if your business doesn't do well, much as it can do well and you have utilized your time well. Again, you run the risk of losing money if your business doesn't do well, much as you also have this advantage that it may make profit, and a lot of profit that will make you prosper. So that's a business venture. It's a business is an undertaking that involves some risk, but the entrepreneur hopes to make some profit. To further explain this topic, I would like us to look at March 2013 question paper that will give us the concept of entrepreneurial qualities. March 2013, 4.1. The question reads, thus we have to start with the scenario. Read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. An entrepreneur with a vision. It's all up to you. You can become an adventurous entrepreneur, a corporate giant, or just a savings investor. It's possible to have good results in bad economic times. Adapting to challenging environments to the business world is vital for any person and in any business. Hard work, perseverance, and honesty are needed from an entrepreneur. You must be optimistic, a goal setter, able to interact effectively with people, inquisitive, enjoy new challenges, and act on your instinct. Now the question is, describe what is meant by an entrepreneur with a vision. That is our topic, entrepreneur with a vision. What does that mean? Immediately you think of the goals. Immediately a person talks about vision, you think about the targets, the goals. Now let's see how this question was answered. An entrepreneur or an entrepreneur with a vision means an entrepreneur with a set goal in life. He has a target to aim for. This is how you will describe an entrepreneur with a vision. That's what you to take care of. Allocate marks when a learner uses examples to demonstrate understanding of the statement. If you are able to give an example of what you are saying, marks should be allocated. But then the maximum should be 2. Remember, you cannot exceed 2 marks. Let's move on to the second question. The second question says, besides an entrepreneur with a vision, list any 4 characteristics of a good entrepreneur from the scenario above. Looking back at the scenario, remember it said, it's all up to you. You can become an adventurous entrepreneur, a corporate giant, or that you should just try to understand what the question entails. There are questions that refer you to the case study, and in such a case, make it a point that you do as you are required. Others will just want you to mention qualities of a good entrepreneur without even referring to the case study. Or they may say, like if this one says, other than an entrepreneur with a vision, which other qualities of an entrepreneur do you know? Then you have to mention all those qualities. We've got many qualities of entrepreneur. We cannot even finish them if you can have to mention them. But then you've got to be able to know that this is an entrepreneurial quality. So learners, this other important factor that we need to mention, remember you also have to know success factors. The success factors of entrepreneur will also differ from case study to case study. More often than not, you may not find a direct question that will just require of you to just mention success factors. If that is the case, you'll just mention sustainability, customer base, etc., etc. But in a case where you are given a case study, just try to look. It's very easy. You have to check from the case study, what is it that has made this person to be successful? That is a success factor. That is as easy as that. So it will differ from case study to case study. Whatever the scenario you are given is, you have to check on what factors have contributed to the success of the entrepreneur, and that would be your success factors. So learners, I really want to wish you well in your examinations. We are still going to do other topics, but you have to study. Much as you will get assistance, you also have to study on your own. It's very important that you study and try to be able to address short questions which are in the section A, also section B questions and section C questions. You should have a strategy of how to answer such questions. So I wish you all the luck, and I hope you're going to do very well in our examinations, but you really have to work hard like an entrepreneur to pass in the examination. So thank you very much.